So, what makes a successful what makes a successful um, John Locke essay competition? What entry to that? So let's have a think about this. Clearly, then, clearly then it's going to be several things. There isn't one single thing you can do to write an effective answer to the John Locke essay competition. I think the first thing is thinking critically. Now, you're going to hear this phrase used a lot as you apply to university, as you complete essay competitions and similar things. Thinking critically is all about understanding the connections between different historical events and the patterns of cause and effect. So history is all about understanding cause and effect. So Eugenie Cho's essay is very successful because it looks at these skills and it shows these skills. It's not enough to tell yourself, okay, I have these skills, so these skills will naturally come across in the course of the John Locke essay. Well, why is that the case? You have to go into detail and depth to show your critical thinking skills. So that means, okay, well, if the question asks us which characteristics, you have to think about, okay, well, clearly I'm going to be looking at multiple factors. But the critical thinker and the effective student will look at that question stem and they will say, okay, clearly we are going to connect these different factors. We're going to link and prioritize these different factors. It's not enough to simply say, okay, there are 4 different factors and this essay is going to look at factor 1, factor 2, factor 3, factor 4. No, how do you connect these things, right? History is all about the chain of causation. How does A lead to B, and how does that ultimately lead to C? So your task is always going to be, can you effectively connect the different factors that you are going to be prioritizing? And this essay does that very well. So for example, okay, if you're looking at a single factor, like, okay, has policy changed? Well, think about, okay, well, why might that not be the only important factor to be concerned with? And so it offers a sort of nuanced perspective, right? So that means you're looking at the long-term evolution of social movements and the fact that there are certain subjectivities here. So what critical thinking means to my mind is 2 things. 1, you can link factors, and 2, you can prioritize factors. What it also means is that you're not necessarily indulging in what historians call single factor determinism. Now, what is that? Well, single factor determinism is when you put too much weight, too much emphasis on a single factor. So as historians, we shouldn't be doing that. As historians, we should be able to recognize the interdependencies, the interconnectivities, and sort of symbiotic relationship between different factors. And similarly, we can't have a single approach that tells us why a historical change may have happened. So that's the first thing this essay does. This essay clearly showcases critical thinking because Cho goes on the offensive in attacking the kind of simplistic metrics that are often used to evaluate movement. So what does that mean? Well, that means very kind of basic, generalizations, right? You might say, okay, well, if a social movement didn't take root straight away and change things straight away, it was a failure. Well, why? That isn't necessarily going to be the case. So there's a lot more in play, generally speaking, with these questions than initially meets the eye.